Hi, everyone. If you happen to hop on this stream, I'm just working out some of the back end here for our float down the coast for Sea Otter Awareness Week. Just trying to figure out why it's not necessarily linking to our page. So give me just one moment as we work on that. Hi, everyone. If you happen to hop on this stream, I'm just working out some of the back end here for our float down the coast for Sea Otter Awareness Week. Just trying to figure out. And there you are. Perfect. I found you. Well, thank you guys for joining us live. That's the beauty of live streams. They're always a little exciting trying to get all the technical stuff in order. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a little title screen. We're having all of our experts get themselves ready. And in the meantime, I would love to hear from you guys coming in where you guys are joining us from. What part of the United States or maybe part of the world. Sometimes we get people internationally as well for these. So I'd love to hear from you guys. In the meantime, I'm also going to add some information for you. Here is a link in the chat to reach Sea Otter Savvy. And I'm also going to link in there some of the information about the survey as well as our story map that we have. And you guys are welcome to check those out as you wait to learn more about our float down the coast. But we will be starting with our experts at 12:01 to let people join us. Mhm. Just a reminder for those that are hopping, I see we've got some viewers coming in. Welcome, everyone. This is our float down the coast with sea otters for Sea Otter Awareness Week. We are so happy that you're able to join us today. We are going to start promptly in 1 minute with our experts as we float down. You'll see in the chat, I've added some information about Sea Otter Savvy that is hosting this event today, some of our survey information, as well as I'll be adding in that story map. And you're welcome to check those out as you wait, but we will start in just a moment. I'm so excited to share all of these different locations and some really interesting sea otter information from the experts here. So stay tuned and you will be able to see some sea otters. I promise you. We definitely we have some locations that are to die for. So really excited to be able to share those with you today. Okay, and with that, we're at 12:01. So welcome everyone to Float Down the Coast with Sea Otters for Sea Otter Awareness Week. My name is Heather Barrett. I'm a sea otter biologist, and I'm the Science Communication Director of Sea Otter Savvy. And I'm so excited to be back for our 4th year of Float Down the Coast. We love this event. We love working with all of our partners and collaborators and colleagues to be able to share this sea otter story with you guys and give some new locations each time and some new tidbits. So this is the 3rd day of Sea Otter Awareness Week. And we are really excited to share some unique locations that are significant to the sea otter story. But before we begin floating down the coast, I do want to recognize that we are celebrating 22 years of Sea Otter Awareness Week. So Sea Otter Awareness Week occurs every year during the last full week of September, and it is organized in partnership with Sea Otter Savvy, Defenders of Wildlife, California State Parks, Alaka Alliance, and Monterey Bay Aquarium. And we thank all of the collaborators that join us in spreading this awareness. Now, this year's theme is Together We Thrive, and it's highlighting the interconnectedness of humans, sea otters, and the environment. And it encourages communities, organizations, and individuals to work together for a healthier, more sustainable future, which for this float, I feel like that's the perfect, together we are thriving by being able to share all this awareness collectively today. I also want to point out that this week highlights our We Were Here Sea Otter program, which educates communities and stakeholders who are missing sea otters, and we offer a public survey for community involvement. So the Southern Sea Otter Range is currently from Pigeon Point near Año Nuevo State Park in the north to Gaviota State Park in the south, which is just a small segment of their historical range. Now, sea otters did inhabit all along the Pacific coast, and they are ecologically as well as culturally significant. And there is increasing discussion regarding possible reintroduction to historical habitats. Now, to move forward, government agencies and the Sea Otter research community need to engage the public and stakeholders and hear your perspectives. So if you're wondering what you can do after you watch and learn all this amazing information today, please take the survey and share your thoughts on sea otter recovery and potential reintroduction. Your voice really does matter, and that is from wherever you are joining in from. The links, the website, the survey are all made available to you at the end, and they're also posted with this video. So you can also, I mentioned that story map. You are also able to learn about sea otters after this, or later on, you can share this with friends through our story map. And this is where the significant locations are highlighted, and the link will be provided with this live stream as well. But without further ado, let's float. So I do caveat, our very first location along our float today is at Norwegian Memorial in Washington State with, and it's difficult to access, right? So we're going to be there with Sea Otter Aquarium's Ashley Olson and Oregon Coast Aquarium's Ashley Griffin Stentz. Now this location is very remote, it's without service, and so they were able to pre-record their interview today to make sure we got to see them and learn from this unique location. So we're going to begin with their video.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Olson, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a research scientist at the Seattle Aquarium. And I'm here with
Ashley Griffin Stentz. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am the assistant curator of marine mammals at the Oregon Coast Aquarium.
And we're here at Norwegian Memorial, which is one of our 10 core sites along the outer Washington coast, where we do research on the Washington sea otters. The local Washington sea otters were actually hunted to extinction during the fur trade or extirpated. And the otters that we're seeing today are animals that were brought down from Alaska, from Amchitka, and reintroduced here in 1969 and 70. They think that about 10 animals survived and founded the population that we have today, which as of last year's survey is estimated to be over 3,000 animals. The range of the otters are all the way north in Clallam Bay, which is in the Strait of Juan de Fuca on the north end of the peninsula, all the way around the Cape Flattery area or Makah tribal lands and usual and accustomed waters, all the way down along the NOAA Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, and all the way down south in the Quinault Nation usual and accustomed waters. We've even seen some Washington otters make it all the way down to Oregon, and a couple were spotted in Cannon Beach recently this year. Also, genetic research has shown that our Washington otters are mixing with the Vancouver population, bringing down some genetic diversity from the BC sea otter population. And what we do here is use binoculars and a spotting scope to observe sea otters that are foraging. And so some of the data that we're collecting are how long is the animal taking to dive? What prey item is it bringing up to the surface? How big that prey item is? How long it takes it to eat that on the surface? And then the next dive and the next dive. And we try to collect about 20 dives per bout. And all of this information goes into a model which can tell us how well the population is doing. It's pretty cool. It takes the time that the otter is diving as energy spent and time and size of the prey item, which we know how much kilocalories is per prey item based on size and species, and how much energy the otter is taking in. And that gives us a sense of how the population is doing as it nears carrying capacity, which is the maximum number of otters that can be sustained by this ecosystem. And so far, we have shown that the otters haven't reached that, and so there's still room for growth, but we'll keep an eye on them as this is our long-term monitoring research project. Thanks for joining us.
Well, that's so exciting. We got to be able to join them at that location. They also were able to send, I don't know if anyone's ever tried this before, but when you use spotting scopes, sometimes you can get your camera to actually show you what you're seeing. And so they were able to get a little clip. It moves a little quickly, so I'll play it first, and then I'm going to slow it down for you guys so you guys can see. But I want you guys to look through here and see if you can see any sea otters. They did do that fast, but this also gives you a sense of how far out they're looking out into those rocks over there. And I'm going to go backwards now. I'm going to bring it back and I'm going to pause it here. So if you can see, there are sea otters all along here. There's quite a few of them. And even some of them are up here onto the rocks as well. So sea otters do haul out on land, especially if it's getting cold and they need to warm up their temperatures. But just a really cool visual and gives you that sense of what it's like to be a researcher. And you might just look with your normal eyes and you might not see anything, but with some really good gadgets, you can get a good view and collect that information about what they're eating to get a better sense of how they're doing off of that portion of the coast. So a big thank you to Amy and Ashley for sharing that location with us today. And so now we are going to be heading further south to Oregon Zoo, where we're going to hear from Alaka Alliance's Chanel Hasten and Oregon Zoo experts. And we're actually going to meet them from inside the sea otter exhibit. So I'm going to end this share, and then I am going to spotlight our dear friend. Let's see, where are you? There you go. Chanel, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am here at the Oregon Zoo in Portland. We are doing some feeding with the sea otters here with the Marine Life team. I am the Director of Outreach and Community Relations for the Alaka Alliance. And Alaka is a native word for sea otter. So we are a nonprofit here working to restore Oregon's sea otter population because sadly they were extirpated over 100 years ago. And we haven't had a population here since then. And so this is the only place where you can see them here in Portland and also in Newport at the Oregon Coast Aquarium. And so we've got Nicole. Who are you feeding today?
I'm feeding Juno and Sushi.
Nice. And then we also have one more.
Got Lincoln right here.
We've got Lincoln and Rob. Yay. So I know in the previous video, she said that there were 2 sightings of some otters off of Ecola Point and Cannon Beach. And I took a photograph of those otters. So that was really exciting. That was the first time it's been documented that 2 live sea otters have been seen here on the Oregon coast. And they are assumed to be young males from the Washington population coming down to look for some females. And unfortunately, we don't have any here in Oregon just yet, but hopefully maybe within the next 5 to 7 years, we can have a reintroduction of sea otters here in Oregon to bring them back to their native waters. Sea otters are very culturally significant to our tribes here in Oregon. The Alaka Alliance was created by a select tribal member. And so that's one of the reasons why we want to bring them back to the Oregon coast. They are also a keystone species. So they are very vital to the health of our ecosystem and our kelp forests and estuaries. So that's another great reason to bring them back to Oregon. We've lost about 2/3 of our kelp forests. So it's really crucial that we do bring sea otters back to help restore that balance as a long-term solution. I'm going to flip the camera around so you can watch these otters. So all the otters in captivity, they are rescues. There is no breeding of sea otters in zoos or aquariums. And sadly, that means they cannot be released as well. So they are great ambassador species here in Oregon, since we can't just go out to the beach and see them like you can do with our friends down south in California or in Washington. The 3 sea otters we have here are Lincoln, Juno, and Sushi. Who is the oldest we have here, Nicole?
Juno.
How old is she?
He is 10.
10 years
And you
old.
can tell she's a bit more blonde. And Sushi's our youngest.
Nice. So the Alaka Alliance is doing a lot of great things to bring sea otters back to the Oregon coast. We are doing public outreach and engagement. We are working closely with a lot of different stakeholders to make sure we understand all the impacts for everyone involved. We're also asking Oregonians to help us spread the word politically. So talk to your elected officials, give them a call, shoot them an email, and let them know that bringing sea otters back to the Oregon coast is beneficial for us all, for the health of our ecosystems, to help bring back a culturally significant species, and to also boost economic value on our coastal communities. We published a South Coast tourism impact study that said about $3.5 million of estimated income per year just to have sea otters out on our waters in Oregon on the South Coast. What kind of food are they eating here, Nicole?
They're getting shrimp and clam, a marine fish called capelin, squid. They do get clams in the shell. This is something that they had clam in earlier.
Whoa, there we go.
And that's how they get the food out, is they bang it open or pry it open. They also get crab and oysters and sea urchins.
So is it true that they're one of the most expensive animals to feed at the zoo?
They are the most expensive animal to feed at the zoo. And the reason is they eat a lot of food. So Lincoln eats like 13 pounds of seafood a day. It's all restaurant quality food and it's seafood. So of course it's very expensive. Oh. Good.
Super. So the Oregon Zoo and the Oregon Coast Aquarium are 2 great places to view sea otters here in Oregon. And also they're doing several events for Sea Otter Awareness Week, which is awesome. We are partners with both the Oregon Zoo and the Oregon Coast Aquarium. They are both very eager as well to bring sea otters back to the Oregon coast so we can see them out in the wild. And we have some Oregonians behind the glass there too.
Wow, Chanel, thank you so much for being able to share this unique view to everyone tuning in. Just so you guys know, we have people tuning in from Taiwan, UK. So people from all.
Wonderful. Well, if you want to learn more about the Alaka Alliance, please feel free to visit us at OregonSeaOtters.org. And we're also on all the social media channels at Alaka Alliance. So please follow us and stay tuned with reintroduction efforts here in Oregon.
Absolutely. And Chanel, make sure to put your that link in the chat as well. So thank you guys so much at the Oregon Zoo. Bye, guys. And we are now headed. Bye. Wonderful job. We are now headed. Wasn't that cool? I feel like it's amazing to be able to see behind the scenes and all the work people do. But we are now headed to Santa Cruz, California. So we're zooming down south. And we're going to meet with Dakota Peebler with Heirs to Our Oceans. Hi, Dakota.
Hi there. Well, hello everyone. My name is Dakota Peebler. I am 19 years old and a current undergrad at Cal State Morro Bay. I'm a volunteer with Sea Otter Savvy as well as a co-founder of Airs to Our Ocean. Airs to Our Ocean is an international youth-led nonprofit that is dedicated to the empowerment and education and connection of youth globally in ocean water protection and climate justice. And I am currently on the beautiful California coast in Santa Cruz at Lighthouse Point, which is a very popular spot for both locals and tourists. It is a very popular location to spot some otters or hop in a kayak or surf. If you can see here, you can see a beautiful kelp canopy behind me, and we often see sea otters as well as rafts. And I have my scope set up behind me, so we're gonna try and get the camera on the lens so we can see. It's a little foggy, so we're gonna do our best. Let's see if we can. There's some otters right there, resting and grooming in the kelp. Earlier this morning, there was also a mom and a pup, and they were resting in the kelp forest. And this is super important for sea otters, as you know, as y'all were mentioned, they eat a lot, and that's important because they have such a high metabolism and they're spending energy. And so it's especially important for sea otters with pups to be able to rest, to be able to groom, you know, as they're foraging for two and they're grooming for two. So it's really disruptive for sea otters when they are disturbed. And so because there are so many sea otters in this area, and especially on weekends and during the summer, there's a lot of people that come out on the water and they want to enjoy and they want to see sea otters. It is the perfect area to investigate the nature and the frequency and the outcomes of specifically surfer and sea otter interactions. And so last summer, in partnership with Sea Otter Savvy and with the support of Jenna Bental, I was able to lead a research project that was looking into exactly that. And so with scope monitor sessions, when we were looking at the distance between kayakers and other stimuli, as well as surfers and their distance to sea otters, as well as the any behavior we see from the sea otters in response to surfers or other stimuli getting in within 100 meters of each other. And we also collected surveys from surfers in the area. And what we found was, even just from witnessing this area during the summer, was unlike the kayaks and the stand-up paddleboards and the boats that we were seeing quite frequently disturb the resting sea otters in the kelp canopy, as they were often, you know, had the motive of going out to see sea otters and were usually getting too close to take a picture. Normally what we saw with the surfers was a different story. The number and magnitude of disturbance was much less with the surfers. Anytime really the surfers were getting within 100 meters of the sea otters was actually normally when the sea otters were leaving this kelp canopy here to come forage closer to where the surfers were, near where the waves were. So normally they were staying pretty far away from each other, which is great. And, you know, from the surveys that we got and from the people I spoke with who are surfers here, there's a deep respect and an understanding for the water that they're in and the life that they're in proximity to. And I think that that circles back to the theme of this Sea Otter Awareness Week, which is Together We Thrive, and, you know, making sure that coexistence is possible in a way that's respectful. And, you know, sea otters are protecting our kelp, so and we rely on them as a keystone species. So it's important that we do our job in protecting them, especially if we're going to go out to enjoy the waters. We make sure that we're doing it in a way that is aware and savvy. So if any of y'all are in the Moss Landing area and you want to learn more about sea otters and you actually want to look through a scope with your own eyes, you can come over to the Sea Harvest restaurant on Friday, where I'll be with some sea otter volunteers, and there'll be a viewing station and you can check out some sea otters with us. So that'll be this Friday from 10 to 2 p.m. Signing out from Santa Cruz.
Thank you so much, Dakota. And thank you for the plug for we have so many events this week. So absolutely, if you are in the area, you can definitely go down and see some wild sea otters. And we have so many more virtual events as well, as does Alaka. So thank you so much, Dakota. I'm going to remove your spotlight. We are now headed, I got to look at we are going, not too far south. We are going to go to a staple along our float down the coast. This is Elkhorn Slough, and we have Jenna Bental, and she has friends with her. Hi, Jenna, how are you?
I'm great. We have some fog and a little wind here in Elkhorn Slough, so we're paddling against the current. Well, my friend Mark here is paddling against the current to keep us in place. But we're here in the amazing Elkhorn Slough. Like, I am Jenna Bental. I'm the founder and director of Sea Otter Savvy. I'm here with Mark Runyon, who's a manager and a kayaking instructor for Kayak Connection, which is a kayak rental and tour shop right here in Moss Landing. And we're here and behind the camera, say hi to everybody, Aaliyah, who's keeping us on track and directing the camera movement here today. So thanks for helping us out, Aaliyah. So we're here in Elkhorn Slough, and what is a slough? Slough is Slough, and it looks like slough. It's a funny way for describing a wetland that, in this case, doesn't always have to connect land to sea, but in this case, is connecting terrestrial freshwater runoff with the ocean in Morro Bay. So if I were to keep paddling directly at you, directly into the camera, I would eventually end up in Morro Bay. But it's quite salty here, and it's an incredible habitat for wildlife. And it's one of the places where I really first started to recognize that sea otters inhabit different kinds of ecosystems along the coast, besides just the rocky contours that we're used to thinking them in. And so here we have salt marsh habitat, field grass that they're foraging has had an incredible impact on, and incredibly rich wildlife. So we may or may not have some sea otters popping up during our video. I know that we did have one. We did have one over there. Still over there, Leah?
It is. It's just very obscure next to the mud.
Okay. So we have a sea otter that's home out on the salt marsh bank, which is a way that sea otters help stay warm and longer and keep the body temperature up. They're not immersed at all in the water. And we might have otters foraging around us. Why are most of the otters foraging right now? It's a high tide. And the eelgrass beds where they tend to rest are underwater right now, and the maximum amount of their habitat is exposed to the water so that they can reach places back in the salt marsh that are a little bit, might be high and dry during a lower tide. So almost all the sea otters around are taking advantage of that, looking for food. But if we see one, we have lots of harbor seals for sure, and lots of pelicans and cormorants around us. If we see some sea otters, we'll definitely zoom in on those. Of course, they've been around us all morning, so maybe we'll get lucky. Anyway, I'm going to introduce you to Mark here. We're talking about the theme of Together We Thrive. That's this year's Sea Otter Awareness Week theme, and I really feel like Elkhorn Slough is sort of the poster child for figuring out that challenge of having wildlife, protecting wildlife, and also introducing people to these places where they can have an experience and really appreciate the wildlife that are around them. So how, as a business operating in Elkhorn Slough, how do you guys sort of balance that opportunity to bring people out with protecting wildlife?
Yeah, so really glad to be here, and to get to that question, I started Kayak Connection about 5 years ago, and during that time, I've had a lot of opportunities to work with Sea Otter Savvy and to really try to change the way that the slough is used by our renters, by our tour participants, and try to find ways in which we can be a big part of educating folks out here about how they can both change their behavior on the water that day, but also answering the why question, not just the how question of how we avoid disturbance, but answering the why question of why disturbance is really impactful on these animals and what they can pass that on to their friends. And when we have people coming out here on their own, buying boats, taking boats out on their own, they have the opportunity to know a little bit more and be a little bit more respectful of those animals so that we can have a little bit more of a harmonious kind of interaction with the wildlife out here. Kayak Connection also does a lot to try to get disadvantaged groups out of the water. We have large discounts we offer to school groups as well as nonprofits and just communities, farm workers in the Salinas and Watsonville areas to try to get folks who normally wouldn't have access to this area out here learning a little bit more about just the incredible diversity we have. Let's Pam take a look at some of the animals you can see all the otters here. The cornucopia, different species. We have a bunch of double crested cormorants on the beach here. We have a bunch of called out harbor seals. And past them, we have over 1,000 pelicans that watch back here. And that is the reason why I'm here after 5 years. It's just such an amazing place to spend time and to learn more about the relationships we as humans can have.
Yeah, and Mark and Lucy talked about making this like accessible, and that's a big part of what Sea Otter Savvy wants to do too, is to build excitement and enthusiasm in these communities that maybe haven't had a chance to actually come out and experience this before. And it really seems like an important part of developing stewardship in local communities. And like I always say, if everyone joins together to be wildlife stewards here, my job is subverted materials. The communities are really the ones that are taking care of wildlife. And I just wanted to point out that Kayak Connection is one of the shops that is certified under our Community Active Wildlife Stewards program. So they actually have to go through a certification process, meet a pretty high standard, high criteria for stewardship in their business practices, their education to their customers, their advertising, all those kinds of things, the training that they go through. And I'm really proud to say that the two biggest shops here in Moss Landing, Kayak Connection and Monterey Bay Kayaks, both certified. The 3 eco tour boat companies that tour into the slough, Monterey Bay Eco Tours, Elkhorn Slough Safari, and Whisper Charters are all certified as well. And then we have Monterey Bay Hydro Bikes, which also does a really great job with their education. So I'm really, really grateful to the community of Moss Landing for coming together to really protect wildlife here in this habitat that's amazing, it's accessible, but also vulnerable. And I don't know if you guys can see that there is an otter right over there. We might end on that note, thinking about hauling out on the pickleweed there, maybe grabbing some of the crabs in the bank. Actually, the crab burrowing destabilizes the bank, and so the sea otter eating crabs helps prevent erosion. And with that, I think we're gonna turn it over to our next float down the coast site.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for you guys A+ for actually floating. So that was wonderful. Thank you guys. And we are now headed not too far further south. We're headed to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, one of our favorites, to hear from Allie and Caitlin a little bit more behind the scenes. I'm going to spotlight you guys and welcome to our float.
My name is Caitlin, and I'm Allie, and we are Sea Otter Rehabilitation Specialists coming to you from one of our Sea Otter holding pools behind the scenes at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So the Monterey Bay Aquarium is located on the Monterey Peninsula, and that is a lush kelp forest environment that's actually home to about 500 southern sea otters. And the Monterey Bay Aquarium has been rescuing and caring for sea otters since 1984, and in that time we've responded to over 900 sea otters. And we are actually the first program to rehabilitate and release sea otter pups back out into the wild. Yeah, so the Sea Otter program has multiple teams built into it. We have the team that Allie and I are on, which is the Otter Care, and we help rehabilitate and also respond to stranded sea otters. We have our team that takes care of our resident sea otters and their care when we are not using them as surrogates. And then we also have our research and tracking team who help monitor the populations along the coast and also the ecosystems that they're living in. We all come together to play a big part in this program, but there are separate entities as well.
So sea otters might stand for a multitude of reasons. A lot of what we see is sea otters that come in due to injury or illness. A lot of our cases are actually pups that are still dependent on mom but have been separated too early for whatever reason. And we will take those otters into our care regardless of their age or condition and do the best to rehabilitate them.
So we're going to kind of briefly go through the step-by-step process of rehabilitating a pup that's stranded. Unfortunately, we cannot show you like live footage of the otters that we have in our care, but with our U.S. Fish and Wildlife permit, we're able to show some video clips that will hopefully give some context to what we're talking about, and they're also just fun and exciting to see. So we're going to start with rescue, and that starts with a call from the public. People out on the beaches will let us know that they came across a sea otter. It could be an older otter or a pup, and let us know the condition that they kind of see it in, and then we'll come out and assess and kind of take it from there. We do want to say that it is extremely important that if you do happen to come across a sea otter on the beach, to please give it distance. These otters can be very dangerous, and it's important to wait for trained personnel with proper equipment to be able to show up and handle them. And we're going to show a clip of a pup that's stranded, and whenever there's a pup that's stranded on the beach, our first thought is to try and reunite it with its mom. The mom will be able to take care of the otter way better than we ever could, and they need to be back in the ocean with them. So in this video, there's a stranded otter. One of our staff members is holding the otter up, trying to get it to vocalize. And we're looking for an adult otter in the area surrounding that may be vocalizing back to the pup. They also may be swimming frantically back and forth, kind of circling the area, kind of getting closer, but maybe a little bit hesitant. And then eventually, when the otter comes in close enough, we might gently toss the pup into the water. And so then mom will be able to come and collect it and take it off. And then there is a lot of times where mom is not around for whatever reason we are unsure of. And so in that case, we will bring the otter back to the aquarium and take care of it from there.
So once an otter is brought into our care, they're all going to get an exam with our veterinary staff, where they're going to do a full health assessment and workup of that animal. Very first thing, so we have an idea of the type of care that they're going to need. Once they've had that exam, we'll put them into an appropriate enclosure. So it might be something like an ICU enclosure where we're able to work with them a little bit more closely and provide them the care that they need. Of course, anytime we're working with these animals, we will fully disguise ourselves, and that way we're hiding the human form from them because we want them to stay wild. And one of the skills, or one of the things that we do with them is we groom them. So the otters have a very important coat. So grooming is important, that we're maintaining that quality coat condition. We're working out any fats, we're keeping them dry, and overall that's really essential to their health. Another thing that we'll do with them is to do what we call water time, which basically this is working with them in the water and helping them learn really vital skills and hit developmental milestones that they'll need to be successful in the wild. So whether it be getting comfortable in the wild or in the water, urinating, defecating, handling objects in the wild, working towards foraging skills, all of that is going to be really important skills that they're going to need to know in the water. Additionally to that, obviously these animals need to be fed. So we'll start out by bottle feeding them. Obviously this is going to replace them being able to nurse on mom. So we start out by giving the sea otter pups bottles, and then we eventually can work our way up to introducing them to solid foods and helping them learn how to handle different diet items that they're going to need to be able to eat when they're in the wild. All of this happens during this period of intensive care where we're getting them ready to be placed with a surrogate mom. once they've kind of mastered the skills to a level that they're independent enough, we will pair them with one of our resident sea otters, and they'll serve as a surrogate mom.
So this video clip is us introducing a pup to one of our now retired surrogate otters, Kit. In the clip, you'll see that the pup is added to a tank where just Kit was by herself to kind of limit the distractions from any other otter sounds, anything that might disrupt their bonding time. And this is what's so unique about our program, that starting in 2001, we started using our resident non-releasable sea otters as surrogate moms for our releasable pups. And in that time, we have had 9 resident surrogate otters here at the Morro Bay Aquarium. And then recently, one of our partner organizations, Aquarium of the Pacific, down in Long Beach, has started a surrogacy program where they are utilizing 2 of their resident otters as well. And these surrogate moms play a huge role in the success of these pups when they're released. They teach them skills that we would not be able to as human caretakers. That could be how to forage on different diet items. We can't teach them how to crack open a live crab, and moms are much better at doing so. It could also be how to groom their coats. They need to be able to efficiently groom themselves and maintain their body temperatures. And then also how to interact with other otters of different ages. Eventually, when the mom and pup are fully bonded, we will introduce other otters into the tank. That could be another surrogate pair or otters that have been weaned. And so they can kind of learn the social dynamics, so they are more successful at it when they're released. And we want to make sure that we know that nothing is forced for these otters. The resident otters they can decide whether they want to be moms to these pups or not. Sometimes it takes multiple days of introduction to be able to fully bond. And other times the pairs might not be successful and we might have to utilize another surrogate option, and that one might be a good match.
So once these pups have spent their time with the surrogate mom, we'll wean them roughly around the time that we would see weaning happen in the wild. And then it's time for them to refine their skills. So they'll spend some time with other juveniles that are similarly aged, and we'll make sure that they really can independently hit the milestones that they're going to need to be successful in the wild. And then the very last step of pre-release is making sure that they can be identified so we can monitor them once they're released out into the wild. So they will get a VHF transmitter like this. This allows us to use monitoring equipment post-release. So we will have a specific radio signal to them that we can track them through radio monitoring. And then they will also get visual identifiers. So these colorful flipper tags help us just visually quickly see the otter and identify who they are as an individual. So all of these things need to happen before they're ready for their big release day.
And then once the otters are released, both our team in Otter Care and also our research team will track them extensively until we feel like they are successful enough to be deemed officially released. And this is a huge effort. It takes part, tracking will be on shore, it'll be on boat, and we also have a pilot that will fly and be able to tell us a more accurate pinpoint of where the otter is in the bay, because they can travel all up and down the coast. And so it's a huge effort to be able to capture these guys after being released.
As you can imagine, rehabilitating sea otters is a huge amount of work, and we wouldn't be able to do it without a lot of helping hands. So between our Morro Bay Aquarium team, our amazing volunteer base, and also our partner institutions all along the coast, we all work together to make this work happen, which I think is a great example of our theme this year, which is Together We Thrive. We really need the help of all of these people to make this amazing work happen. So with that, thank you for joining us from the Morro Bay Aquarium.
Thank you guys so much. What an amazing view into and a great description of what that is. I just have to say that clip of and emphasizing that mom is best. No matter what, it's always best to make sure that pup gets back to mom, and to see, a sea otter biologist and someone, an expert, being able to do that in that process is really, really almost sort of gives you chills, right? To see that. And just a heads up to everyone watching, because I don't want to lose people and make sure that they hear this too, is that if you do see a pup in distress, there is a number and something to call. So I will get that and make sure to add that in the chat as well for how to contact. And remember, don't ever go up to a sea otter and try to attempt anything like that. That is just for the experts, but what a wonderful way to see that. And then thank you guys for sharing the detailed progression of what that means for release if that pup does not get to be reintroduced back to its mom. But thank you guys so much. What a wonderful part of this presentation. Thank you guys. We are now floating further south. Bye guys. I'm going to remove the spotlight from you. And now there's Libby. We are headed to Morro Bay. Spotlighting you. Oh, did that work? There we are. To beautiful Lisa Morro Rock to hear from Libby with California State Parks. Hi, Libby.
Hi, thanks, Heather. Again, my name is Libby. I'm a California State Park interpreter here at Morro Bay State Park. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I am standing on the edge of Morro Bay near the harbor entrance, and I am lucky enough to actually have some sea otters here right off the rocks with me. So I am going to flip my camera around and let you all get a good look. There's about 15 individuals that we've been observing this morning. They've been resting and grooming. We've had some very vocal pups that hopefully we'll get to hear today. But while you take a look at these otters, I'll tell you a little bit about Morro Bay and why it makes such a great home for otters. So Morro Bay is an estuary. It has salt water coming in here at the harbor entrance and freshwater coming in further back in the bay in creeks. So that mix of salt water and freshwater make that estuary environment. And it's a super important ecosystem. So this is a fish nursery. It is a migratory stopover for birds. And it is also an important habitat for marine mammals, including the southern sea otter. So if we take a look across the channel here, you can see a bit of land here and the water going back in the bay here. That piece of land is called the sand spit. That is a big, long line of sand dunes that travels the length of the bay, and it creates a bay and protects it from the open ocean. So if we were to go on the ocean side of those sand dunes, there would be big waves crashing. But as you can see here, this is a nice, calm environment. So a nice place to rest and relax, nice place for otters to raise their babies. And you might be surprised to learn that the Morro Bay is actually fairly shallow. So here at the harbor entrance and where the boats are, there's a deeper channel, but the further back we go, the more shallow it gets. And because it's so shallow, we don't get a lot of large animals coming in the bay. So that includes one of the predators of sea otters, the great white shark. We rarely see sharks come into this bay. So it's a nice, safe spot for otters as well. And of course, there's a lot going on under the water. There are kelp forests and there are eelgrass beds. And both of those habitats have a lot of the things that otters like to eat. So we have 3 things that make this a great habitat for otters. We have calm waters, we have a safe place, and we have lots of food to eat. So prime otter habitat. Now this spot that I'm at here, we usually have a raft of otters. It can be up to 20, sometimes even 30 otters hang out here. And that's because there is a kelp forest right off the rocks. And it's a really unique area because it provides super easy otter viewing for the public. They're just mere feet away from us right now. So really unique along the coast of California to be able to see wild otters this close. But I'm going to flip around and I'm going to show you what it looks like from the otter's perspective. So I am at the base of Morro Rock, which is an iconic destination. We have thousands of visitors that come here every year. There is a big parking lot. There is a beach on the other side. So this is a super busy area. Lots of human activity. Lots of people walk their dogs here. And of course, on the water, there's a lot of activity too. This is the harbor entrance. So we have a lot of boats coming in and out. We have a lot of kayakers and paddle boarders. We've had drones that fly in this area. So a lot of activity, which makes this a disturbance hotspot. So We've found that the best way to combat disturbance is through education. And at state parks, we have a program called Sea Life Stewards. This is a program that puts volunteers out on the water in kayaks and paddle boards and even walking here on the shore. And their job is to provide education for visitors. So they're answering questions about wildlife like otters, but they're also providing guidance on safe and responsible wildlife viewing. So giving those recommendations of 5 kayak links from an otter, passing parallel in your boat, and then when you're here on shore, keeping a nice quiet environment. So we found this education is really helpful, especially during our summer months when we get thousands and thousands of visitors here, and the otters are such a big draw. So we have these otters here to view, but they're not the only otters in Morro Bay. There is a steadily increasing population. They've been increasing for about the last 20 years or so. And a count in July gave us 53 adults and 8 pups. Of course, that's always changing with otters coming in and out, traveling up and down the coast, and new pups being born, but that gives us an idea of what our population numbers look like. Now, these otters here, if you travel further back in the bay, you can maybe see otters at a pier in the harbor. It's called the nursery because moms and babies like to hang out there. It's a nice, safe area. And if you go even further back in the bay, you can see otters. But what you don't find further back in the bay as much are kelp forests. Instead, you find eelgrass. So like Elkhorn Slough, we have a lot of eelgrass beds. And I have some eelgrass here to show you. It's really similar to our lawns we find at home. It's a flowering plant that lives under the water. It requires sunlight to make its energy, and it's a really important ecosystem and habitat for a lot of animals that live here in Morro Bay or migrate here to Morro Bay. Now, we know that sea otters are vital keystone species for kelp forests because they eat purple sea urchins, but they're actually vital to eelgrass forests as well, because they eat another favorite food, which are crabs. So this eelgrass, again, needs sunlight to thrive, but it can get algae growing on it. And when that algae gets really thick, it's hard for it to take in that sunlight for photosynthesis. Luckily, there are tiny sea slugs that eat that algae off of this eelgrass. When we have crab populations that get too high, they eat those sea slugs, and we don't have enough sea slugs to do their job keeping this eelgrass nice and clean. Enter the sea otter, who is that crab-loving super eater. They eat crabs, keep their populations in check, which in turn allow those sea slugs to thrive, keeping eelgrass healthy. So it's a whole cycle that happens here in the bay, and otters are key to that cycle, key to keeping this eelgrass thriving, keeping it healthy for all of the plants and animals that call Morro Bay home, keeping the bay healthy from erosion, and keeping this around for those migratory birds that come and eat it in the wintertime. So again, there are keystone species in the kelp forest, there are keystone species in eelgrass beds as well. So it's really awesome that we have otters here in Morro Bay that you all can come and visit and see so close up, observe some wild otter behavior, but also give thanks to them for being such an integral part of the ecosystem here. It's a really unique place. I hope you can all visit someday. And thank you all for joining me, and happy Sea Otter Awareness Week.
Thank you so much, Livy. What a beautiful scenery, and I'm so happy that you have a lovely raft behind you, and it was really great to see the eelgrass so close up. It is such an interesting organism. So thank you so much. Now we are headed to our last location on our float. Before I get to that, though, I do want to acknowledge we've got some questions coming in the chat, which is excellent. Some great questions. If you guys are watching this and you have more questions, please add them into the chat. We're going to get back to them after this last location, and then we'll open it up to the experts so that we will get to them. Thank you. But we're going to be floating down to our final location, and we're going to be joined by Sea Otter Savvy's Kate Riordan at Kalama Beach. Now, this is at the Southern Range periphery, and she's going to be talking about the Southern Range limit and relevance to stalled sea otter recovery. She had to pre-record this because it is a difficult location to get to and has no service. So give me one little moment as I wiggle around with some things and then get back to that presentation, and then I'll be able to share with you guys Kate's video. Let's see. Hopefully this is more elegant. Oh, it worked. Hopefully that's showing. Okay. Here goes Kate.
Hi everyone, happy Sea Otter Awareness Week. My name is Kate. I am a team member for Sea Otter Savvy in Abbey Beach, California. Today we are here at Palomba Beach. It's a beautiful beach here in Santa Barbara County. I am a Sea Otter biologist and I've been working with Sea Otter Savvy for a few years now. And we are here at this beach today because it's part of the most southern span of sea otter population range. So from Pigeon Point, California, along the coast through Santa Cruz and Morro Bay, all the way down here to Santa Barbara County is where you can find sea otters. So we're down here at the most southern area where you can find sea otters. Today we have a few sea otters and a group of sea otters called raft right over here in this kelp bed. Big threat to sea otter populations, especially down south here, is the threat caused by white sharks. So one of the highest reasons for mortality in sea otter populations are white sharks. So white sharks typically come up, take a bite of an otter while resting at the surface, and they think that the otter is a seal just because they have similar body shape. And then once they take a bite, they bite into all of that fur and then realize that it's not a seal, and they don't end up actually eating any of the otter because it doesn't have any blubber or anything like a seal. So scientists call that a curiosity bite, and it is a big cause of death in sea otters here. So the presence of these high numbers of white sharks in these waters pose a big threat to sea otter populations, and scientists believe that the presence of these white sharks, taking a bite of these otters, is possibly one of the reasons why sea otter populations aren't growing as quickly down south here near Halama and Point Conception. Another threat to sea otter populations down here is oil spills. So here in Southern California, we have a few oil rigs or oil platforms. We have one right now here in the fog bank. So what these oil platforms do is they go down into the ocean floor and take up oil resources. There are also natural oil seeps down here. So if you're walking on a beach, let's say in like Gaviota down south, you might step on some tar on the beach. So just like how tar can get stuck to human skin, tar and other oil can get stuck to sea otter fur. And when sea otter fur becomes oiled, that oil penetrates into their fur and doesn't allow the fur to be waterproof anymore. And then they can no longer properly insulate themselves. I completed my master's degree at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and my thesis was on the effects of crude oil on sea otter fur across different age classes. So I was looking at how the oil affects the thermal function of sea otter fur from adults who have a different fur type than pups. And what we found was that all sea otters are vulnerable to the effects of oil just because that oil does penetrate right down into the skin. The fur no longer can no longer be waterproof, and then they can't properly stay warm in the cold California water. And what makes sea otters different from other marine mammals, like seals and whales, is that seals and whales rely on blubber to stay warm in the water, while sea otters only have fur. So let's say a dolphin got oiled from crude oil, from an oil spill, that wouldn't have nearly as much of an effect on the thermal properties of the blubber, right? Because they have nice smooth blubber. But when an otter becomes oiled from oil spill, they could die from things like hyperthermia or hypothermia. In 2015, in Refugio Beach, which is about a little south from here, in Santa Barbara County, there was an oil spill. Luckily, no sea otters were affected from that oil, but the presence of these offshore oil platforms definitely pose a threat to sea otter populations down here in Santa Barbara County. So white sharks and oil spills pose a very big threat to sea otter populations down here. So what I do for Sea Otter Savvy as a team member is I go out to Avila Beach typically and count how many sea otters we see. So how many adults or pups are in a group of sea otters. And then I also write down their behaviors. So whether they're grooming, eating, or just resting. So today we have a group out in that kelp bed. So I'm going to count it and let you know the behaviors they're doing. All right, so I counted a raft of 4 otters. 3 of them are resting, and then 1 is grooming her pup. So we use that data to monitor the populations in Avila Beach, California, Morro Beach, and in the Monterey Bay area. So that wraps up today for our Adventurous Sea Otter Awareness Week with Sea Otter Savvy. I hope you all are enjoying learning so much about sea otters this week, and I hope you guys always respect the nap. See ya.
Thank you so much, Kate. If you're listening, everyone, just that was a windy day, so she got blown away, but it was wonderful information and really great to emphasize, especially down in the South, the issues around white shark bites and oil. So thank you, Kate. Before I open it back up to everyone, I'm going to ask them all to come back in and we'll be open up to questions. I just want to take a moment and remind everyone that there is a public survey and we would love to hear from you. If you're wondering what you can do, especially when we're talking about Together We Thrive, you're part of that. And so we would love to hear from you. The link directly to the survey is already in the chat. I'll add it again, and you can also use your phone to snap this QR code. But with that, I'm going to stop the share of this video. There you guys are. Hi, everyone. Wonderful. And I'm going to pull back up. Let me end that show. And let me pull back up all of the comments. We got some good questions coming in from everyone that has joined us today. And so I'm going to scroll back up to the top. And then what I'm going to do is ask the question and then maybe sort of see who, maybe I think we'll be able to figure out who that might be best for. But first, we just want to say hi. So Barry Rollingson is tuning in from the UK, and he was watching the only otter in Birmingham. He is at Birmingham Sea Life Center. Well, hi, Barry. I'm glad you were able to join us. We've got people from Glendale, California, Taiwan. That's amazing. And people were saying, thank you, Chanel. That was excellent. So Kelly has said, my favorite float each year. I'm wondering why it will take so many years to get female friends up to Oregon for the 2 males up there. So I'm gonna maybe send that to Chanel since she's in Oregon, and I bet she has an answer for us.
Hey, yes. So we do sometimes occasionally have some lone males, maybe 5 times a year, that come down to the Oregon coast. But since sea otters are not migratory, there's not going to be a raft of females to ever join them. So we haven't had a population of sea otters here on the Oregon coast for over 100 years. So without us physically translocating a population to the Oregon coast, it's very unlikely that there's ever going to be a population just to reestablish here. So thankfully, we do have some males from Washington that do come down. So in the future, when there is a population of sea otters here in Oregon, they can intermingle with each other and transfer some genetic diversity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chanel. And I know that even Amy up for Seattle was talking about how they're getting some genetic diversity coming through them as well. And so that's always really, really exciting to hear. So thank you, Kelly, for that question. And then I'm going to move down. So we got some people saying, just for those that ever want to go see sea otters, your scope, and there's also really cool adapters that set your phone to your scope. So that's right. If you guys are going to go visit sea otters, you want to keep your distance, bring a scope, bring binoculars. There's really cool gadgets now that help you take video. So you stay a safe distance away, but you can get really cool recordings. And then we've got Derek saying hi from California. This has been great. Cindy, this has been awesome. Can't wait to get out to California, maybe in 2025. They're from Central Iowa. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Here we've got a question from Sasha. Are the kelp forests coming back for the sea otters? I know a lot has been destroyed over the years. Thank you. I think I might go from sort of north, and then I might also go to where there is current range. So maybe I'll start with Jenna, would you like to answer that for current range? And then maybe Chanel, I'll send it back up to you for north. So Jenna, can you answer that question for Central California?
So the question was, can you repeat that question one more time?
Of course. So are the kelp forests coming back for sea otters? How is kelp forest doing in Central California? We'll start with Central California. I know that a lot has been missing over the years. Thank you.
So it's a complicated question. Kelp forests in California are a complex ecosystem, and there's a lot of factors at play. And so we have changing ocean temperatures. Kelp are not fond of warmer water, so that can impact them. Plus, we have the loss of the sea stars that created this shift in urchin numbers that have caused urchin barrens and loss of kelp. And those have occurred all along the California coast, even where there are sea otters. But the cool thing about the locations where there's sea otters is that their foraging on urchins has really limited the expansion of urchin barrens. So they form these little pockets, but sea otters foraging around the edges of those barrens on the most reproductive urchins are limiting the expansion of those barrens. So the kelp forests have been impacted on the Central Coast, even where sea otters are, but not to the extent that they've been impacted at locations where sea otters are not. So they really kind of have that buffering effect. So this big ecosystem shift that occurred due to those factors that I explained is not having as dire an impact or the same impact as it is in Northern California and Oregon. And I think with that, I'll shift it up to Chanel.
Yes, thank you, Chanel. Tell us more about Oregon kelp.
Yeah, so Oregon used to have kelp forests expanding most of our coastline, but a lot of our kelp right now is located on the south coast where we have rocky reefs, the perfect habitat for them. And unfortunately, we've lost about 2/3 of our kelp forest for some of the reasons that Jenna pointed out earlier. Rising ocean temperatures. We are at a loss of 2 top predators in our kelp forest, the sunflower sea star, which got taken out by sea star wasting disease around 2013, and obviously the sea otter as well. So missing those 2 key predators, sea urchin populations have boomed off our coast. There's an estimated 350 million urchins just on one reef alone in Southern Oregon. So it's going to take something big for some change, and hopefully a sea otter reintroduction is that one thing that will help with a long-term solution. But there are also efforts here in Oregon for kelp restoration and sunflower sea star reintroduction as well. So it's a multifaceted effort with a lot of stakeholders, but the ultimate end goal is to have a healthier marine ecosystem, which benefits all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Such eloquent answers. You guys, I think you guys have asked that question before once or twice. Wonderful job. Okay, the next one, I'm going to shoot this over to Libby. This is at Morro Bay. So Margaret's read that Morro Bay has had a lot of success with replanting eelgrass in the estuary. Have sea otters started to spend time in the new eelgrass beds?
Yes, so we had an occurrence, I think about 10 years ago, where eelgrass really, was not doing well in Morro Bay. And through the efforts of the Morro Bay National Estuary Project and their partners, they've done a lot of replanting. They've done acres and acres of replanting. And it's another multi-factor thing that we plant, and there's pollution control, there's education, there's sea otters contributing to the health of the eelgrass. So many different factors into play, but now we have the most eelgrass that Morro Bay has possibly ever had. There are acres and acres. The more eelgrass you see washing up on shore, the healthier it is. People have the misconception that that means it's unhealthy, but that actually is a sign that there's lots of eelgrass. And in turn, because of those eelgrass beds, otters are venturing further back in the bay, where traditionally they weren't seen as often. So they're definitely shifting, finding food among those eelgrass beds.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. Thank you. Wonderful answer. We also have a couple more questions, so just stay with us. Oh, Andy also mentioned a recent paper determined that kelp persistence over the past century is closely tied to that presence of sea otters. It's quite unequivocal. That's a great point. And I believe that paper came out of Morro Bay Aquarium, which I actually have another question for you guys next. Wanted to make sure that people knew what to do if they saw a stranded sea otter. Could you guys give a little bit of details of what that would look like? I put the thing into the chat, but we had some interest in learning more from you guys verbally as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you see a sea otter that you think might be in need, like we talked about earlier, it's really important to give that otter their space. And then go ahead and give us a call. That's a number that we can definitely put into the chat for you guys. But if you give us a call, that will link you to a hotline that will speak directly to us. And we will be able to send an email to assess the situation. Sorry, we got a plane coming by. It might be a little loud. There we go. We can send an email to assess the situation. We're going to have the proper training, the proper equipment that keeps us safe when handling a wild animal. Because remember, this is a wild animal. And we'll be able to assess if that animal does need help and bring it into care. So yeah, the big takeaway from that is really to give the animal space and call the professionals so we can come in and help that animal and give them what they need.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for highlighting that and all the work that you do. Our last question is coming in for Dakota. Didn't want to forget you as well. So the question is, when you were doing the research project, there's been interest in understanding, like, how did you find some of the surfers? Were they interested in the project? Were they helpful? Was there good collaboration in that sense and talking about coexistence?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was doing the monitoring at both locations, both here and at Pleasure Point, we had a little booth with information with a survey that people could fill. And then also, we had our scope out, we had all of our, research equipment. And so people would come up to us. This is an area where surfers are not only going out on the water, but also coming out to just look at the water and see the sea otters. So a lot of them would come up to us and just start talking about their stories and their experience with being on the water a lot and their care for sea otters and how we stay away from them and we just love to be in the same space as them. So it was both reaching out to surfers with this survey and then also just these natural organic conversations coming up as they saw that we were doing sea otter research, and there's definitely a big respect and a big appreciation for that animal that they're out with all the time.
Wonderful. Well, it's so great to hear that people, I think we always talk about making this a greater concept of what is our community. Sea otters are our neighbors, and together we thrive. I think that's been emphasized through this amazing event, which we love to do every year. All of these organizations work so hard, and we work together, and we're friends and we're partners. And so people always ask, like, again, what can I do? Well, support us. You can support all these different organizations, and you will help sea otters. And then the last thing, I'm going to make my last plug. It is there again. I just put it in the chat. You can go take that survey. But thank you everyone for joining us. We had a great turnout with wonderful questions, and make sure you add to the calendar for next year. We will be here again for next year, and tonight at 5 p.m. You can hear from the Haida Nation and their experience with coexisting with sea otters as neighbors. That will be also live streamed to YouTube from the Marine Conservation Institute. You can find that through our stories at Sea Otter Savvy. Thank you, everyone, and bye. Everyone, I'll ask you to stay on as I shut this down. Just making